So, just to start, my name's Graham Bisland. I'm a senior R&D engineer in the NMIS design engineering team. I head up the market acceptance team. I've got 16 years of experience in industry in verification and validation of products and new development of products. Miles, do you want to take the chance just to introduce yourself?
Of course. Yeah, thanks very much, Graham. I'm delighted to be joining Graham and NMIS today on behalf of SICCAR, a blockchain company that is really excited to be in partnership with NMIS on a number of projects in the past and in the present. I've been involved with tech startups for the last 5 years or so, previously with a hardware company and now very much in software. And my role at SICCAR is to help customers understand the value that our platform can bring their business. Really delighted to be here today, and I will of course be looking forward to answering questions as we go along.
Brilliant, thanks Miles. So just a bit of housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the NMIS YouTube channel, where a number of other Insight presentations are also available. Your microphones and webcams will be turned off during the session to avoid any background noise. Please though, feel free during the session to type any questions you have in the chat box. We'll be having a look at those, and as Miles says, there'll be a chance to answer questions towards the end. Time will be allocated for questions, as we say. If you also have any questions that you want to put on the Twitter channel, if that's more appropriate for you, it's at NMIS_group, and please add the hashtag NMIS Insights. And finally, at the end of the presentation today, the marketing team will send out a questionnaire survey for you to complete. If you could please take the time to complete that, the feedback's always beneficial and helps us provide future content that may be of benefit for you. So just to start, what is the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland? It's a group of industry-led manufacturing research development facilities where research, industry and the public sector work together to transform skills, productivity and innovation to attract investment and make Scotland a global leader in advanced manufacturing. The goals of NMIS is to increase productivity by reducing barriers to innovation, stimulate investment and increase manufacturing competitiveness, catalyse job creation and strengthen supply chain links, inspire and attract talent and equip current and future workforce with the skills they and businesses need, and also to ensure that manufacturing businesses of all sizes in multiple sectors are provided with benefits across the whole of Scotland. NMIS is operated by the University of Strathclyde, with a number of other organisations and groups, as well as other universities supporting us. And finally, the NMIS group structure actually consists of some core elements: the digital factory, in which the design engineering team is housed, as well as a number of other specialist teams, the collaboration hub, the manufacturing skills academy, and then some specialist centres, which is the AFRC, Advanced Forming Research Centre, and the LMC, Lightweight Manufacturing Centre. NMIS is open for business right now, so if anyone has any questions or wishes to reach out to us, certainly feel free. We have business development partners who can help in any way. Our lovely new facility will be open in the back half of 2022. You can actually see it behind me there, and also if you're flying over Glasgow Airport. And at that, I'll hand over to Miles to talk a bit more about today's topic. Thanks, Miles.
Thank you very much, Graham. I'm just going to see, hopefully, can you see my slide there?
Yep, that's it.
Excellent. Perfect. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for having me on your webinar series today, Graham and the NMIS team. Really delighted to be telling you a bit more about what we do at SICCAR, as well as a general introduction to distributed ledger technology and blockchain. A lot, very hyped part and sector at the moment, and yeah, hopefully can just give a bit of clarity to this field, and hopefully a lot of you will be interested in that. I will actually then hand back to Graham, who's very kindly decided to talk about something that's been specifically interesting for NMIS. That is a manufacturing record book with regards to implementing DLT system. So Graham's just going to speak a bit about that, and yeah, looking forward to that chapter of this webinar. I'll then go into a bit more detail about how SICCAR are positioning ourselves as a tool for sustainability applications, perhaps particularly relevant for those of us in Scotland, with COP26 being in Glasgow last year. Sustainability is very much on the agenda, and we think that DLT can play a really important part in that sustainable future. So I'm looking forward to talking in a bit more detail about that, and of course go into some use cases. And for us at SICCAR, a couple of really interesting areas include that of green retrofits, making housing stock suitable for a net zero future, as well as emissions reporting. So yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy this short presentation, and of course there'll be room for questions at the end. Feel free to type in the chat box if you've got a question straight away. We can come back to that at the end. So let's start. So very at the beginning, what is DLT, or distributed ledger technology? This is to introduce blockchain and more buzzwords. And the first thing I should say is, for the purposes of today, blockchain and DLT are very similar things. Technically speaking, DLT, a blockchain is a type of distributed ledger technology. And there are various technical types of DLT, but essentially, we can think of these words as interchangeable for the purpose of today. So the definition is: a DLT is a set of replicated, shared, and synchronized digital data spread across multiple sites, countries, or institutions. There is no central administrator or centralized data storage, and this can be useful because essentially you're able to make efficiencies in cutting out the middleman. There are some key properties, DLT, that make this a useful application in a number of use cases. So key properties include the fact that transactions are immutable, they can't be changed, they're transparent, they can be seen by a number of different actors. That results in a high degree of trust. This system is a really great way of ensuring that data or currency is passing through correctly. DLT offers a single source of truth. Really important that this information can't be duplicated or corrupted in some sort of way. It also provides a degree of anonymity, which can be really important in terms of ensuring a level of security amongst a number of different actors. And crucially, this is a decentralized way of doing things. No one party owns the information, and that can be a really useful tool in a number of use cases. So I think it's important also to just mention at this point, before we go into specifics, that there can be two types of DLT, that of a permissioned DLT system or permissionless. Now, when you have a permissionless system, it means that any actor can join the network. And this can be, this is perhaps most famously in terms of cryptocurrencies and networks such as Ethereum, Bitcoin, etc. These are permissionless systems where any actor can join the network and enjoy the the single source of truth that these networks bring. But there is also a permissioned possibility whereby actors are only allowed to join a specific network if they are granted that access. And today we're going to be speaking mainly about these permission networks, which can have a real really interesting use cases in a number of areas. And maybe this is a good place to hand back to Graham. So Graham, would you mind talking a bit about the manufacturing record book example that NMIS has been interested in the past?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Miles. If you just jump to the next slide then. So manufacturing record books was something that with a number of our members of our team, within design engineering team that is, coming from an oil and gas background, it was an area where we had experience and something that we saw immediately where digital ledger technology could offer benefits. So for those that don't know, a manufacturing record book is a dossier of documents supporting the required and applicable quality information for a product. It's typically used in high integrity and high value manufacturing applications, so such as oil and gas, space, aerospace, these sort of things. It can contain material certificates, certificates in conformity, test certificates, witness declarations, and a number of other quality documents which show the integrity and traceability of the materials that you're ultimately providing to your client. It is compiled by the manufacturer and provided to the client, and often is a contractual requirement. So therefore it's essential, and then absolutely critical for the acceptance of the goods from the client. Unfortunately, just the nature of work, it's often done as one of the last things in the manufacturing process, and as such, it can be overlooked slightly, and this can bring with it a number of problems. Miles, can you jump slide for me? So in terms of problems with MRBs, there's many documents that you're compiling, and these can be in lots of different formats, from unfortunately paper-based to PDFs to Word package or Excel package documents, and they all have various bits of information on them that are critical to the overall MRB. Also, documents can be missed at the time of taking receipt of them, so we may have materials provided and not at the time checked the complete certification of those materials or made sure that everything was complete. And as such, you may end up in a position where you're chasing retrospectively onto your supply chain to provide this documentation to allow you to complete and compile your MRB. As such, this can be costly and time consuming. It takes a lot of effort from an individual or individuals within your organization to essentially organize, review, and compile this manufacturing record book. And obviously anything that involves people to this level is prone to human error. So are the correct certificates being compiled? Is something being put in there that shouldn't have been put in there? And then it can obviously lead to issues in terms of the way the customer views the credibility of the material and the credibility of the company that are providing the service or good. Miles? Thank you. So essentially, SICCAR, working with NMIS and a number of oil and gas partners, decided that this was a space where digital ledger technology could be very beneficial. And we essentially worked with this group and developed an understanding of the requirements for MRBs. And this was captured by SICCAR within the digital ledger technology platform. And as such, a case study could be generated to show that not only was the platform there, but it could practically be applied. And as a result, we achieved a number of sort of advantages that a lot of these are ones that Miles has actually mentioned. So we have very clear traceability of documentation. We've got ease of compiling the documentation on a single platform rather than being a paper-bound or folder thing, or essentially a network with different file things. There's one platform which houses everything, single source of truth. We also were able to easily share records across organizations and different organizations, different departments as well. And also to accompany that is the control of access to that data across stakeholders. Not everybody who has access to the platform would necessarily have access to all the data, and you can control rights in that regard. And then it also, for ease of review, it becomes a searchable single source of information, so significantly easier to find the pertinent document for something that you're looking for. So as a whole, this was quite a powerful thing, and I think SICCAR have developed further from when we worked on this project, the manufacturing record book platform, and developed templates and things to further support it going forward. So it's a good example of really how digital ledger technology can be used in a practical way in manufacturing nowadays. At that, I'll hand back across to Miles to talk a bit more about SICCAR and sustainability.
Graham, thank you very much indeed for that. It's really great to go into a bit more detail about how we've worked together in the past. And now I thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk in a bit more detail of how SICCAR are positioning ourselves for the future. And we see ourselves as the sustainability distributed ledger technology platform. We're allowing businesses to use our technology to help with their integrity, transparency, and accountability. And these are all key points that many consumers are demanding right now in terms of how companies are positioning themselves. People are really, often absolutely rightly, wanting to have full information about how companies are conducting themselves. And many current tech platforms do not necessarily help companies and support these core values. And so currently, sustainability is at the top, is the top priority for many businesses. This is being driven by the fact that capital is flowing into businesses that can demonstrate their green credentials, and ESG performance very much controls this access to capital now. There's increased compliance in a number of areas and regulation, and of course it's really vital for businesses that they have a strong consumer reputation. So for us, and our hypothesis is that blockchain, or DLT, can support a transparent and accountable economy. For the reasons that I've spoken about previously, this single source of truth, this transparency, these values that can be driven from having access to a platform whereby consumers or stakeholders in a certain area can be sure that the information that they're seeing and the transactions that are occurring are real, means that DLT can play a real role in helping organizations boost their sustainability performance. And this can be seen in things such as the materials that are being used, ensuring that either stakeholders, consumers, customers, etc., can understand the provenance of certain materials that are used. In terms of supply chain, really being sure that there is traceability in all parts of a process, and being sure that the raw materials, people understand where they're coming from. In terms of manufacturing, things such as the immutable digital twin, privacy and security, compliance and visibility, better material data can all be seen when you use a platform that supports DLT. And then, if you look at recycling as well, circular economy potential you have with distributed ledger technology, is really is a really important way for our businesses to understand how a material gets from A to B, and includes this important aspect of the post-usage and end of product lifespan part of the equation. So the problem is, until now, blockchain's been really difficult to use. So we understand that DLT can offer this transparency, this integrity to businesses, but until now the tech's not really been fit for purpose, because it's been hard to integrate, and projects frankly have been slow and expensive. And so at SICCAR, we're trying and aiming to change that. So we're the world's first platform that lets companies build blockchain applications quickly and easily, and this can be really useful in terms of things like manufacturing processes, as said, but also in specific use cases that I'll go into here. And so you can achieve integration of the SICCAR platform by placing that underneath the tech stack that your business currently uses and operates with. A huge advantage of this is that you don't necessarily need to change the systems that you're currently using. So let's talk about a couple of these use cases where SICCAR is currently involved in. This is the emissions reporting platform, as well as a really interesting topic, in my view, the green home retrofit. And perhaps this is particularly pertinent at the moment. We're working with a customer on a confidential basis right now, so I can't mention that customer, but there's a really interesting use case whereby this customer needs to provide a whole lot of information and data to local authorities but doesn't necessarily want the liability of holding that information themselves. So they've identified the opportunity to look at council housing stock right across the UK. They understand that this stock is currently not fit for purpose in terms of the net zero targets that the government is promoting. This housing needs better insulation. It potentially needs the ability to generate energy through things like solar panels. It also needs, access to EV charging, given that tenants will likely need to change their car stock as well in the future, if we are to hit these net zero targets. And potentially, they also could do with having a much more efficient way of working together to ensure that generation of energy through the likes of solar is as efficient as possible, as well as the fact that saving of energy with better insulation, etc., is also as efficient as possible. So this company realizes that there are ways to create smart grid solutions to ensure that each tenant within a property is gaining most efficiency out of these fabric improvements that are due to take place. So, as a result of all these stakeholders needing to come on board in order to holistically green retrofit these properties, there needs to be a whole lot of information shared amongst these stakeholders, and this information then needs to be fed back to the likes of the government and the local authority to prove that the efficiency measures that have been undertaken are going to help the nationwide hitting of these ambitious targets that everyone is going after. But at the same time, the property company, the maintenance company that is leading this consortium to holistically retrofit these houses doesn't necessarily want this liability and this information, this data liability, whereby they will know down to when Mrs. Smith turns on her heating in her living room when she gets back from work. They don't necessarily want to know the movements of all of these tenants in these houses, but they do want to provide this information to demonstrate that these improvements are really working to the local authority. So this is where the DLT system really works. Each stakeholder within this consortium can be given permission or not, as it may be, to view information and data in a secure and seamless way. So, for example, our property company friends, they want to see and they want to establish a blueprint whereby this flow of data is going through their systems, but they don't necessarily want to see that. So it's possible to encrypt all that information for them, and then ensure that the local authority can actually see that information and that it's unencrypted for the people in the local authority who have permission to view it. So it means that you have a really powerful tool whereby a kind of military level grade of security is possible for all of this data flow, and yet the right people will have access at the right time to see the information that they need to drive further changes. And if I talk briefly as well about the emissions reporting platform that's possible with SICCAR, if you have a number of actors, as many of you will know, who are involved in a supply chain and different scopes of emissions, scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions occurring as a result of getting a product to market, it's very difficult to accurately track all this information and ensure that as a company you're presenting to other stakeholders the true carbon emissions of potentially a product or a service. In using the SICCAR platform, you can be certain that each stakeholder involved in a chain is able to input the the emissions that are involved in their aspect or their part of that process. And the fact that all of that information can then be viewed is a really powerful tool to explain to an end user, a consumer, whoever, government, regulators, whoever it may be, that this is a really accurate way of reporting these emissions. And perhaps even in the case of some of the organizations that perhaps maybe get a hard time for being heavy polluters, they could use a platform such as this to explain steps at each step of a chain to improve the situation, and thereby gain credibility that they really are taking their green targets seriously. So SICCAR is a high integrity data sharing platform for high value business decisions. And our focus, as I have been alluding to in this presentation, has been on these two aspects: the green home retrofit and the emissions reporting tool, both of which are now possible to implement within your business using the SICCAR platform. There are some other areas too that I think are really interesting. These include the likes of carbon credits, where customers may need to register and trace the issuing and retiring of credits to prevent double counting and improve efficiency, and also the circular economy. So here there's a need for end-to-end traceability and assured data to support crowdfinancing models, for example, to issue carbon credits or whatever it may be, in terms of guaranteeing that recycling is taking place as expected, and manufacturing is as efficient as possible using these recycled goods. And so just to finish up with some stats here on the market opportunity specifically as regards to green retrofit, and the huge amount of data that will be involved in the space, ensuring that companies will need to think carefully about how they can be sure that their holistic efforts are fully transparent, understood, and being as efficient as possible. So currently, the built environment is responsible for approximately 40% of the UK's carbon footprint. Housing alone accounts for 23%. So for the UK to achieve the goal of reaching net zero emissions no later than 2050, 29 million existing homes will need to be retrofitted to reduce the emissions generated to heat and power those homes. Now that's a huge amount of housing, and you can deduce from that there is a huge amount of data that will be involved in ensuring that each of these houses are up to a specific standard, achieving maybe a passport, if you like, that this is the required stock, that the required standards that are needed in order to hit government targets. So we think that there's a real role for DLT and platforms like SICCAR to play here in helping businesses, often which, let's be frank, might not have a technical background, so may not have the IT aspect within their business. The likes of SICCAR platform can really help in this space to ensure that people take advantage of this exciting opportunity to really improve housing stock across the country. So I think I may finish up there, Graham. There's a few other things I could just talk to in terms of some of the product focus, building renovation passports, but perhaps we might go into this in the Q&A if it's of specific interest. So I think what I might do at this point, as it's just gone past, is to allow there to be a bit of time for some questions. I'm very happy to go into a bit more detail about any aspect of this presentation that you'd like some more specifics on. So, Graham, does that make sense to finish there?
Yeah, no, that sounds great, Miles. Thank you very much. So if anyone wants to raise a question themselves, certainly feel free to raise a hand, and someone in the team will unmute you and allow you to ask your question in person. I think we've got Frederick there with a question.
No problem. I'll just unmute Frederick.
Thanks, Laura.
That should be you.
Right, Frederick, you should be able to unmute yourself now if you want to ask your question. Can see you now, Frederick, but not quite hear you. If you want to.
You should
Sorry,
be
Frederick.
able to unmute Frederick.
Can we do it?
Top right, is there a microphone?
If it doesn't work, Frederick, we do have your question on the chat, so we could probably just start to answer that.
Okay, thanks. So Frederick asked, he said, well done all presenters. Here's my question. Considering net zero emissions by 2050 by bringing hydrogen gas to displace fossil fuel, would the existing oil and gas pipelines be used for transmission of hydrogen gas? So, yeah, well, do you want to jump on that, Miles, or do you want me to lead you in?
I mean, Graham, I can give it a go. I'd have to say I'm not an expert on the kind of energy extraction or energy creation part of this. But what I would say is that, again, we have worked with a number of organizations in the North Sea. Many of these companies are looking for ways to diversify, and they're looking for ways to think carefully about how they appear, as well as, you know, how they can keep growing, etc. Post 2050, when a lot of the regulations and requirements are going to mean that the energy landscape is going to look very different. So these organizations are thinking hard about how they can diversify, what they can do, and I think there will be a lot of minds thinking hard about how this infrastructure might, you know, be able to be used in different ways. Now, I don't know, you know, the specifics of that question, but if we're talking about data and information and ways for organizations to perhaps see that things are fit for purpose, again, a DLT system can be very useful because you might have a number of different stakeholders, businesses, organizations, testing things, making sure that there are assurances that the bits of equipment that they're used are up to standards. And often you need a level of trust in these types of high value decisions that you know, stakeholders might consider using a DLT style network to make sure that those standards are being met, and that there is a kind of a self-checking system in amongst the stakeholders that are working together to pivot and slightly change direction from what might have been their previous focus. So I don't know if that's useful. Graham, do you have any thoughts on that? You might have a bit more insight into the specifics of that question.
I think ultimately the most realistic scenario is that we end up in a sort of blended model where there's specific aspects of the network are made for nitrogen gas, and we end up with parts of the existing network are being used. I think where the SICCAR platform can kind of offer something in that space is kind of, as you're saying, Miles, it's tracing that data. So what is the consumption, what's going on, what's the sort of transition of the network as it's kind of moving more towards a nitrogen network. And then I suppose from my point of view in verification and validation, really, if you think about, we have a network which is aging, so there will have to be a lot of inspection and maintenance opportunities and monitoring that take place. And as such of that, there's additional data that's being done. So you can see that that data also would need to be monitored and tracked. And I think there's a potential space there where SICCAR could also help manage and maintain that data and keep the sort of the health of the network in place, so that people can see kind of, right, okay, this has been inspected and the wall thickness here is eroded or degraded. That type of level of data would be, I could see that being very beneficial for operators.
We've got a question from David next, so I'm just going to unmute David.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just wondering what sort of sectors you have the most inquiries from?
Yeah, thanks, David. We've had inquiries from a number of sectors, as you might imagine. In blockchain and DLT, that can range from financial services to agriculture to energy, as we've discussed, and as well as property. I would say we've had inquiries across all of these sectors. I wouldn't say there's been a kind of favorite as such. I think for us as a business, we've identified the sustainability space as an area where we can really differentiate ourselves because of some of the things I've discussed. The fact that it's a permission network, there's some real efficiencies there. We can clearly define structures for organizations. We can ensure high customizability, and we can include access controls as well in the way that businesses incorporate the SICCAR platform. But as I say, we've done a lot of work with the energy sector as well in the past, particularly with proof of concepts around things like emissions reporting, for example, as well as the manufacturing record book that Graham spoke about. So there's been a real mix so far. Another example we haven't spoken about today actually was in agriculture. We worked with a company that wanted to prove that the oats that they were growing and selling were gluten-free. So there was a requirement in that instance to work with the farmers as well as the hauliers and the sellers as well, the distributors, to ensure that at every step of the process that those oats were not being mixed with wheat or other contaminants, to make sure that when you get your porridge in the shop, it can have the gluten-free stamp on it that many consumers are demanding. So there's been a wide range of use cases, and I hope that helps paint a bit more of a picture of the types of businesses that we've been working with.
Yeah, thanks. There looks to be a lot of opportunities there. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for your question, David.
Thank you, David. I'm just going to unmute you now. To mute you again, sorry.
I suppose maybe just another question, Miles. So say if someone here on the call or someone watching maybe the video later on YouTube has a sort of possible application they're thinking of in terms of digital ledger technology, what would be the sort of best way for them to kind of explore that opportunity and then even potentially reach out to yourselves?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking that question, Graham, because the best way is probably to give me an email. I'd be delighted to to set up a call with anyone who might be interested in working out whether DLT is going to add value to their organization or their business. And what I'll do is I'll just share my screen again. You should be able to see my email there, miles@siccar.net. If you put the subject NMIS with an exclamation mark, I'll know exactly what that is, and I'd be happy to send over some bonus material as well. So if anyone on this call right now just wants to get in touch, just to network, explore in a bit more detail what this technology might be able to do, really pleased to do that. So miles@siccar.net is probably the best way of starting the process. You can also have a look on our website if you wanted a bit more information, and we can take things from there. But thanks for checking that, Graham.
Brilliant. Has anyone else got any questions just before we kind of go to wrap up?
Yeah, I hope that everyone on this call, I don't know if there's a few questions about the very basics, for example, at the start of the presentation. I know there can be quite a lot of confusing terminology. Hopefully some of that I tried to simplify that where I could, but I realised that sometimes on these webinars it can be kind of difficult to follow. So just checking everyone was okay with that. And I think there was another text in the chat box there. Frederick, opportunity for student internships. You never know. Keep in touch, potentially.
True. Okay. I think at that, Deborah, do you want to just wrap us up then?
Yep, sure, Graham. Thanks very much. Just like to say thanks very much to everyone for joining us today and hope you enjoyed the webinar. And thanks also to our presenters, Miles Backs of SICCAR and Graham from NMIS. And we'll just bring the webinar to a close now. Thanks very much again. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks, Graham. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.